So, hello. Could
Hi,
you
Stacey.
introduce your? Nice to meet you. Could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure.
Oh,
You want me to address the camera?
yeah.
Yes, my name is Susan, and I'm with the Vegan Policy Initiative, and we're here asking all governments to immediately implement a vegan policy so that we can get to 100% veganism, because that's the fastest way to reverse climate change and to reverse all of the damage to the environment and the ecosystem, and also it will help improve global food security and global health and sustainability.
Yeah, cool. So I'm from Brazil.
Yes.
COP30 is gonna be next year in
Yay.
Brazil.
In the Amazon.
Yes, and I would like to know one thing. So all the deforestation in Brazil is related to agriculture, like to open space to put cows and also
Yes.
soybeans.
Yes.
Could
And
you,
corn.
could you tell my Brazilian friends what's the impact scientifically
Oh, yeah. I know a lot about that.
of cows
Okay, so
and
a couple years ago, we interviewed a scientist who was on the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change panel. He was one of the ones who got the Nobel Peace Prize in 2007. He was an astrophysicist, and he told us that climate change is happening so fast that 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 we need to slow it down. But CO2 can last in the atmosphere
Mhm.
for over 1,000 years. And he says even if we go to a his name is Kirk Smith, and he was at University of California at Berkeley. And he said even if we were to get to a zero carbon economy today, everybody's got electric cars, geothermal, solar, wind, whatever. Um, we would still have enough CO2 in the atmosphere to create catastrophic climate change events. And so a group of scientists at the Arctic Council, because they were seeing a lot of it happening up near the Arctic Circle, and they were, the Arctic countries like Norway, Denmark, the United States, Canada, and they were like, well, what can we do that will reverse climate change faster? And they said, well, we need to. There's certain climate forcers like emissions plus black carbon that go out of the atmosphere much faster. And most of the charts like show CO2 as the biggest. They show all the other emissions. They show CO2 as the biggest. That's in 100 years. But if you
Yes.
look at 5 years or 20 years, other things are a bigger contributors to climate change, like methane, black carbon. Black carbon is where you burn
Yes.
something and there's incomplete combustion, and then ground level ozone. And they said, well, if we could get rid of these, then we would be able to slow down or even reverse climate change. And so I started looking around, and I found that there was a lot of there's a lot of burning going down on, in Brazil. So I called this University of West Virginia and asked to talk to a professor, and he was an expert in, I'm not sure what it was, but it had to do with Brazil. And he goes, yeah, you go down to some of those states in Brazil. I think it's Mato Grosso.
Mato Grosso.
Yeah. And he says during the burning season, in the middle of the day, it can be as dark as night. And he says what's interesting about that is it started during the mad cow disease in the United Kingdom, where a cow cannot be put into the food supply if it dies before it gets to the kill floor. So if the kill floor is here, the cow dies here, they grind it up and feed it to other animals, and so they had to stop doing that. And so they just so they when that happened, they were like, oh well, we need pasture raised cattle, and we want more. If we can't feed rendered animals, that's what they call dead ground up animals that died before, too sick to make it to the kill floor. Then we have to find something else, soy and corn. So they went to Brazil and they said, hey, would you mind burning down your rainforest for us? And they said, sure. How much are you going to pay for it? Basically. And what he explained to me is that the soil is so thin, they would go and they would cut down the rainforest or the savanna or whatever and allow it to dry out. And then they would burn it during the burning season. And then the soil can only last a few years, and then they let it regrow a little bit and do it over and over and over and over again. And then I was Googling around and I found this study on black carbon written by some scientists down in Brazil that was presented to a American Geological Society or whatever it was, Geophysical Society. And I contacted one of the scientists, and they were looking at what the impact was of this black carbon on Antarctica. Now, when the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change,
Hmm.
first look, am I losing you here?
No,
When the
no.
IPCC first analyzed Antarctica, they said it's too far down south, it's
Hmm.
not going to melt. But what happened with the West Antarctic sheet? It was
Hmm.
melting very, very
Yes.
fast. And so they started looking at where the black carbon was going from. Black carbon is the soot, incomplete combustion from the burning of forest fires, agricultural fields, car exhaust, smokestacks. And they estimated that 50% of it was coming from uh, the burning for the cows
Hmm.
and everything, and that's causing the sea level to rise. And then Peru, the president, not Peru, Bolivia, the president of Bolivia, Evo Morales, held a climate change conference down in 2010 or 9,
Hmm.
and his argument was like, we can't wait for 2 degrees Celsius for the warming to happen to 2 degrees Celsius because we're already feeling the impact at 1 degree Celsius. Because what was happening was that their glaciers. Well, let me back up with the black carbon. So the black carbon, it's black on white glaciers.
Hmm.
They found that it can go thousands of miles. So when you have a white glacier and you put black carbon on it, the soot, it attracts the sun, warms it up, and it speeds the melting. So we're getting
Hmm.
melting of the Antarctic ice sheet and gradual sea level rise. But they were having problems in Bolivia, which is, of course, in the Andes, and they were having glaciers melt very, very quickly. And they thought, oh well, it's the industrialized countries in the north with their CO2, and so I wrote this paper called "Reclaiming Chactocaya" because I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but it was an 18,000-year-old glacier that melted. It was supposed to melt over, I don't know how long it was supposed to melt, but it melted very quickly, like over 10 years. It went very fast. And the glacier, of course, is where the farmer, it's like a water storage for the farmers.
Hmm.
So this glacier melts off, and then during the next summer, there's nothing really up there to come down over the summer for the farmers to feed their crops with, to water their crops with. And so the farmers could no longer grow food up there. And so I wrote this paper called Reclaiming Chactocaya, and our group went to this climate change conference and
Hmm.
presented it to him in English and then in Spanish. And basically, it made a lot of these arguments that look, we need to get rid of the livestock because the methane goes out of the atmosphere. It's the leading human caused source of methane is livestock,
Hmm.
mostly ruminant animals, and Brazil has a lot of the ruminant animals are cattle, sheep, and goats. They have a lot of methane, and then you have the black carbon, and there was a whole lot of other things in the paper, and basically saying, look, it might be some local things that are causing this glacier to melt off, and if everybody goes vegan, you might be able to,
To restore.
to restore this glacier. And about I don't know,